Guys, welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. Today with us, we have Richard Lever. Quite excited to interview him. He's CEO at Alliance Physical Therapy Partners. We're going to talk about physiotherapy business acquisition, what it's like to manage 200 plus employees. I'm not sure how much employees Richard has, but he has quite a lot, and he's quite experienced CEO, a vet, as we say. Richard, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about APTP.
Yeah, thanks very much for welcoming me as a guest. Really appreciated. So yes, I'm a physical therapist myself, or physiotherapist, trained in England a little over 30 years ago, been in the States for the last 20 years. Currently CEO of Alliance Physical Therapy Partners, which actually have about 1,200 employees. Of that, about 800 clinicians, primarily licensed physical therapists, and actually well over 100, about 140, I think, licensed athletic trainers as well. So worked in outpatient physical therapy for pretty much my entire career.
That's quite exciting. And I'm just wondering, what does ATBT does as a differentiator rather than other physiotherapy clinics? What you guys are innovating on, and what's special about the clinic that would make me visit it rather than another?
Yeah, I think everyone has licensed physical therapists, but so from a technical perspective, I would hope that pretty much anyone you go to would be able to deliver a comparable and efficient, effective clinical outcome. But really, where we pride ourselves is really, exemplary, exceptional customer patient experience. We have a people first culture, and my perspective is if we take great care of our employees, they'll then be able to take great care of our patients. And just in our title, where we call ourselves partners, and that's not in the legal sense, that's really in the kind of the practical sense, where we collaborate with our employees, we value their input, we seek it out, and then together we try and come up with the best answers, best processes, best strategy, and really trying to move forwards as one group, cohesive group, rather than kind of individual clinics. And I think it's worked pretty well for us. We have a net promoter score of 91 for our patients, and for our employees it's actually 40, which is really quite impressive compared to any type of business, let alone healthcare.
Yeah, from a business perspective, I've seen various marketing agencies specialize only in physiotherapy clinics in the last couple of years. And I always pondered why. Is it because the physiotherapy owners are easy to reach? Is it because they've got a bunch of recurring business? I think it's more the latter than the former. So what's the attractiveness of the business other than obviously serving humans and making good in this whole world and making them kind of unstuck and more healthier? Like the cash side of things, is it true that this is one of the best recurring slash cash flow business there is? Is that like the interesting aspect behind scaling that type of business?
Yeah, there's a few things that has made outpatient physical therapy business attractive to investors. The definitely healthcare generally, this concept of being a value to society, I think attracts certain individuals to it. It won the feel good factor, but really more so than that, it's the fact that it tends to be recession proof. With aging populations, the demand for services is there. We really don't have referral issues. We have more of an issue actually with sufficient healthcare workers, and that's the same across many countries and continents, and not just the US. And there's really low barriers to entry if one wants to establish a PT practice or buy a PT business. And yes, it does have a reasonable rate of return. No, I don't think it's as strong as it used to be, but it's still certainly a lot better than a supermarket.
The other leverage, I guess, is that insurance companies cover these fees most of the time, and in some countries, governments. So I guess that is a pretty cool leverage to have. When people don't pay, they don't really mind paying high fees, right? Or you may charge high fees, they don't pay it from their pockets in the end. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I think consumers with regards to healthcare are becoming much more savvy. Yes, 20 years ago, insurance pretty much paid for the entire amount. And there was this psychological disconnect between the payment of the premium and the cost of the service. I think that's really, certainly in the US, that's changed. The burden of payment is actually more and more transferring onto the individual rather than the insurance company. Reimbursement rates have actually been pretty low as well, or historically low. You know, it's crazy to me, the fact that if I want to get a plumber, it's going to cost me probably $250, $300 to get them to cross over my threshold into my house. Whereas in the US, the average revenue per visit is approximately, let's say, around $100, $105 for a visit. I'm not saying that we're better than plumbers, but really the cost of that is, or the revenue generated by the actual healthcare provider themselves is actually relatively low for many types of certainly ancillary healthcare services, whereas the consumer believes or sees the bill, which is very high, but you know, the payer takes a large cut, the administration takes a large cut, and by the time it gets to the provider, we're not talking about large margins. If you look at USPT, which is a very successful publicly traded PT company in the US, you know, their margin, a bottom line is, I think, about 10, 12, actually, I think it's about 12%. So we're not, this isn't like pharmaceuticals with high margin business.
Yeah, for the plumber analogy, I guess like most humans, they just like are built with the cost, right? So if I have this leak, it's gonna damage my house. It might cost me in the end like 3K per hour or something like that. And oddly enough, like most humans, they don't really care about their health and their body, right? Most of that is outsourced, and it's just like it's normal, right? I feel back pain. I won't go check myself, or some people just sacrifice too much. So it's kind of interesting how the population thinks nowadays and kind of put their health on the side. We may discuss about that later. From what you just mentioned, that it's quite surprising how low the margins are. I would expect them to be quite higher than that, and it's kind of related to my next question. You mentioned the lack of workers or quality work in Canada and in my native Quebec's one of the places in which the problem is as high as ever. So you go to the restaurant, there's no waiters. They even close the restaurant because they don't have any staff, or they hire students. The students show up like 10% of the time. So yeah, quite a big problem. I'm very much of a futurist, so is my audience. What about bots, physical bots to kind of help with that, or is there like more simpler and less futuristic solutions for that?
Yeah, great question. There's a kind of rounding out the answer a little bit. There's definitely a supply and demand mismatch with regards to healthcare workers and future demand, and that's structural. That's not a short-term issue. That's a long-term issue. It's not just therapy. It's probably the majority of healthcare workers. So how do we see more people essentially with less human labor? And we're trying to grapple with that. And I don't think it's just one technological solution. I say there's two key factors that will differentiate winners and losers in healthcare in the US. One is the recruitment and retention of licensed clinicians. And the second is really adoption, embracing technology. And that's really at every step of the process, through to the registration, the verification of one's insurance, the automated check-in, and then to complement the treatment. So using virtual care, using software to help with measurement of movements and to ensure that patients are compliant with exercises and treatment, through to ongoing patient relationship management. And I think that's critical, really. The unfortunate thing is I believe all the technology is already there. You know, it's just getting clinicians and consumers to accept technology as embedded into their care. And it's certainly, there's gaining momentum. But for example, We use software to be able to deliver electronically patients' home exercise programs. So we have software that we can choose video exercises tailored to the individual patient. Only 25% of patients are actually delivered their home exercise program electronically. 75%, we're still actually printing out a home exercise program, something as simple as that. So I think it's not the fact we've got to develop new technologies. We've just got to implement successfully the ones that we have, first of all.
What about telemedicine? And for example, last time that I went to the physio, it was a running clinic. So I'm seeing that they're starting to innovate on the services they offer. What about the innovation on the product/offering side of things?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point when it comes to virtual physical therapy care. Um, it is starting in the US. For physical therapy, virtual PT, it's relatively new. It's only really since COVID, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is state licensure rules changed somewhat to allow therapists to treat multiple states would get allowing them to get multiple license relatively easily. Secondly, is state laws. A lot of state laws had to change to actually allow therapists to actually use telehealth as a medium. Before then, a number of states didn't even allow it. And then thirdly, it's really direct access laws. So in the US, it's only relatively recently have pretty much all states now allowed consumers to seek PT without a prescription, certainly for a period of time anyway. So there's been an alignment of those issues which have allowed us to actually treat in the virtual sense. But the final piece really is the fact that consumers don't necessarily connect the dots as it pertains to therapy. They don't believe necessarily that physical therapy can be delivered effectively and efficiently in a virtual sense. It can. There's certainly a perception in the US still that really physical therapy is hands-on massage, and that's only a small component. We've shown through agile virtual PT that the outcomes, the reductions in pain, the length of treatment are all positive when it comes to virtual. Going forwards, I believe the best outcomes will actually probably be when you combine the two, bricks and mortar care with a virtual component, because obviously increased convenience for the consumer and increased monitoring, and then better monitoring, better buy-in is better clinical outcomes as well. So it's starting. I'm not sure how quickly virtual PT will be adopted, but it's here to stay. And I think increasing number of consumers will utilize it either completely, but more so probably in conjunction with traditional healthcare consumption.
100%. I think that yes, consumers are somewhat confused. A quick confusion is like chiro vs physio. What's the difference? People like ask that all the time. I think people think physio are for people that do sports only, while ergonomy is a huge and growing field. Especially, like I would take the trend of like people with their neck, always checking their phones like that. That's like more and more of a trend as technology develops itself. And I would be like early in this market, either try to offer a service and or a product, which is my next topic, like offering selling products at a commission. For example, a Tarragon, be affiliated with these brands would be a nice revenue stream, and or offering info products, so like a little video class of how to take care of yourself, stretching, or like daily Zooms, like stretching sessions and so forth. So I think this market is very much ripe for innovation. I think there's a lot of potential to it. My next question is quite simple, and it's been quite hard for most, but like, how did you basically get through COVID? Because like you were there right when it hit, right? You started at 2018 and it hit like us like really hard. I had to pivot part of my business too. How did you survive that?
Yeah, but actually, before I answer that, what I'd like to do is just go back just very slightly and talk about this continuum of healthcare and wellness.
Yep.
I think really to be able to manage or maintain the health of a nation, a community, I think we've got to stop looking at having a siloed mentality. And this is really, certainly in the US, in England and Europe, I think it's a little bit different. They're a little bit further ahead. But I think you really have to look at the continuum of wellness, and that's from the elite athlete all the way through to the person with multiple comorbidities and chronic symptoms, and they have to be managed along that continuum rather than separating it out for different providers and different types of services. I think to truly look after society and their health and well-being, I think you've got to have that kind of perspective. Moving on to COVID, yes, COVID was a real kick in the teeth, to be honest, like everyone else. Interestingly, physical therapy was deemed to be a necessary service during COVID. So physical therapy clinics actually did not shut in the US. They were deemed essential services, which was great. It certainly promoted us, and it was nice to be recognized of the role that we play. A lot of actually PT companies, I think, are still somewhat digging out of the hole, and they're just about returning to pre-COVID volumes. But it's been a long haul. Hospitals have struggled and still continue to struggle. A lot are still losing money as a result of the increased costs and changes to services that they've provided. We had our struggles, but we definitely implemented a lot of processes and strategies that really served us well. We used as an opportunity. I think there's a saying, is never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's really what we did as a company. We pivoted, we looked at every facet of the business, we optimized the business, and we just really took it as a chance to create a sense of urgency to adopt additional changes that we then continued thereafter, and it strengthened us. So whilst it was extremely painful, we lost 45% of our volume in 3 days and had to furlough a significant minority of our workforce. Coming out the other side, I think it definitely, there are two stories: those companies and businesses that really used as an opportunity to adapt and have come out stronger, and those that really had their head in the sand and still haven't really recovered from it.
Right. And it's the same story with AI and AGI nowadays, people fearing it vs people viewing it as an opportunity. What I can say is that it was a hell of a baptism of fire for you as a CEO, like your first month, like right hit in the face by this tsunami. So props for you on making it. And I'm pretty sure you've got like way wiser because of it, just like I did. My last point is kind of related to the AI thing, but also with what's next for you guys, because there's a lot of opportunities of acquiring clinics that probably want to be part of the family. You look at these as opportunities, and you strike if the price is right. So what's in the plans for the next 5 years? And where do you see AI into that whole equation? Because you see like all the recent headlines, and you've probably tried the ChatGPT yourself. Like, where do you see the clinic and ATBT going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, we're already looking at it. We haven't embraced it and formalized it, but we're looking at it in every facet of our business, from patient relationship management through educational materials, trying to understand what consumers are wanting to consume educational materials wise, to actually helping us develop the materials, all the way through to even with site research, helping us understand markets better, complementing our existing knowledge and resources to really be able to hone where we believe we will be most successful with strategic growth and development. And then I think also it's really adopting it from the patient care perspective as well. I think that's probably down the road a little bit, but there is no facet of the business that will be untouched as it pertains to AI. And I think if anyone believes differently, I think they are kidding themselves.
Yeah, the illusion is this quite a preeminent thing. Less in the leadership, but yeah, people need to get out there and heads of the sand and look at the horizon, because there's this huge tsunami coming. You can surf it or you can get hit by it, just like COVID.
Absolutely.
So was a fantastic interview. Thank you for the time, Richard. Where can people find out more about you and APTP?
Absolutely. The website is allianceptp.com. And we're on pretty much every social media platform as well. So please do check us out.